Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the mysteries of the past, and the uncharted realms of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders. Together, we'll unravel the tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean.
Welcome to the fourth installment of our
Reincarnation series.
Yeah.
It's episode 23.
Ep 23. Let's go.
Yeah. We are beyond the half a year of podcasting. So,
So just up in the forefront, we got some restless kids tonight so far. So if you notice us splicing anything, it's just because splicing the audio. It's just because we got to pop out real quick. Yeah.
I hear some crying.
Yeah. Maybe we just do it here.
Okay.
I'll be back.
All right. And we're back.
Took the first break. We almost got 2 minutes in. And, baby break right off the bat.
Totally.
He is settled down? Question mark?
Hopefully he falls back asleep. So, OpenAI had some announcements.
Yeah.
I wanted to fill you in.
I read like a post about it, or I flipped through and saw something, but I have no idea what the actual news is.
Yeah. I watched the demo. It was pretty impressive. So essentially what they've done is modified their model to be more what's called multimodal. Okay, so like right now when we talk to Chat GPT on the podcast, we're talking to the microphone, it's going into Chat GPT, it's being converted from voice to text, and then that text is going into Chat GPT. Then it processes it, spits out text, and then that text uses a text-to-voice model to convert GPT's text back into a voice.
Right.
What the multimodal model does is it allows the audio itself to go in as an input.
I see. So it actually can register
it's not
the
being,
audio.
Yeah, it's not being switched to text first. Right, so that allows the model to not just pick up the words you're saying, but pick up your intonation, your mood. Like it can essentially try to analyze whatever you're saying in audio form and respond in kind. And in the same way, its output allows it to output directly into audio.
Okay.
And what that allows for is for the GPT voice to actually emote, because it's not just taking text and putting a voice to it. It's actually spitting out audio in the correct intonation and rhythm and inflection.
As your own.
Yeah, so during the demo, they were doing these really cool things like having it read a bedtime story.
Oh, a bedtime story about robots and love? I got you covered. Gather round, Barrett. Once upon a time, in a world not too different from ours, there was a robot named Byte. Byte was a curious robot.
And then they were like, make your voice sound super epic. And then it got more intense as it was reading the story.
Got it. Let's add some drama. Once upon a time, in a world not too different from ours, there was a robot named Bite.
No, tech.
And then they're like, no. I want like maximal expression. And it got all animated. It was like, once upon a time. It's like,
Really?
yeah.
Understood. Let's amplify the drama. Once upon a time, in a world not too different from ours, there was a robot named Bite.
And then they were like, can you, because it was like a story about a robot or something, like, can you tell the story in a robot voice? And then it switched to being like, once upon a time. Like, it was pretty
Wow,
cool.
It can actually play characters for you.
Yeah.
Initiating dramatic robotic voice. Once upon a time, in a world not too different from ours, there was a robot named Bite. Bite was a curious robot.
Which is
That's
pretty
awesome.
cool. And it's much faster. But
I
what
feel
they
like we're going to
didn't,
get a lot of that in Audible. Like Audible books are going to be using that a lot instead of paying actors.
that would be cool. Yeah. That's going to happen at some point. Yeah, for sure.
From this
Mm-hmm.
specifically.
I'm sure Amazon has its own AI
Yeah.
stuff that it's developing, but like that technology
Yeah.
will essentially probably be what ends up reading audiobooks.
I mean, even if it's not Audible, there's other platforms
Yeah,
that could
I mean-
utilize it right away once they.
I mean, once it also they've increased the amount of tokens, I believe.
Oh, the amount of times you can use it.
Well, it's
Or
the
times out, or what is that?
it's the token. A token in AI is like essentially a piece of a word. So like one word, if it's a long word, might be multiple tokens. A really short word might be one token, but a token is just like a chunk of a word.
Right.
And they count how much you can input into the AI by the number of tokens you can put in.
Okay. All right.
It's just how they word things. Anyway. But yeah, I think now I'm confusing that with the Google one because Google said they're increasing theirs to like 1 million tokens. And then in the summer, they're going to increase it to 2 million, which is essentially like the entire Harry Potter series 3 times over.
Wow.
So they're going to, but that is the Google one. I don't know how big OpenAI's is now. Anyway, a lot of people were
increasing their while they're increasing their database too, like the stuff they're pulling from, right?
Well, no. So they didn't update the model. It's still cut off at like June 2023 as far as its last
They just have
information
new
update.
features.
So what they essentially did was expanded it to be multimodal rather than update the information in it and like focus on making it smarter. So it's only like minorly smarter than it used to be. It's not. That's why they called it 4.0 instead of 5.
I see.
So, and they also made most of the features available to free users now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So now the main benefit you get from paying for it is just that you can, it's got a longer memory for you. And I think you get bigger token limits and faster, like, response times. Like if they need to throttle server access, they're going to throttle the free people before the paid people.
Right.
But
that's cool.
So we don't have access to it just yet. Like they did, they launched a new app. So there's a desktop app.
And then there's like a new separate thing now for that.
Yeah. So now you can launch the Chat GPT app, and that's where you'll be able to just talk directly to it.
Oh, I see. It's an actual app instead of just using the web.
So right now we're kind of using it kind of hacky with the Mia AI plugin that allows it to us to talk to it and it to talk back.
But this is like full on. It doesn't need
it won't need that anymore. It'll be direct and the voices will be better. Cool. So that'll be pretty fun to play with once it's released to the public. So whenever they release it, we will be using it.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. We'll do our second Chat GPT with that. Our second episode, like you, like having them as a co-host.
But it can do other things too. Like you can like, if you have it on like your phone app, you can like give it access to the camera and then like show it things and ask it what's in the photo or like what is this type stuff. Talk about things that are like
because Google Assistant kind of does that. Google Assistant does that.
Or like I saw one demo where they were using the desktop app with like some sort of online meeting, like a Zoom meeting or something. And it's able to like watch the video and listen to the meeting and tell who's talking.
And you can have it take notes for you.
Yeah, it'll actually be able to know the difference between our voices, essentially.
Oh, cool.
When we use it through audio, because it'll hear the different voices. Yeah. You just have to introduce yourself so it can attach the name to the voice.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
That'll be really fun. Sick.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
So that's some pretty cool stuff coming down the road. It's getting close. A lot of people after the event, they were like talking about like we've essentially reached the movie Her, where you basically can just talk to this thing.
Yeah. And once they're like the full phone operator, like once Siri is this thing, and it's not just a chatbot that can do some tasks because it's a part of your UI. Like this part of your, as a part of your UI on a phone would be like pretty drastic change to how people use phones. Probably. Yeah, because a lot of people, you have your earbuds and like, or your AirPods, or
you got two types of people. You got like the type of people who use Siri, even with all its messed up limitations, and you got the people who won't use it because it's stupid.
Yeah.
So after, they make Siri a real AI, it'll change the context, and probably a lot more people will end up using it.
And now that they got the Vision Pros, or the new
the
Apple
VR headset, the Vision Pro.
It's like augmented and VR, I think you can do both, but the augmented part of it's pretty cool, where you can like have a bunch of screens up and like, it's all within your living space, but it's also clunky.
$3,500 cool, but it's cool.
No, definitely not, but it's cool. Like if somebody, I want to try it.
Yeah, I would love to. You can actually go to the Apple Store and try it if you want.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to do that.
I think you have to set an appointment, but you can do it.
But yeah, so like eventually having like what would be wearable glasses, being able to do something like that.
Oh, right.
With earbuds that eventually are going to get small enough where you can just kind of like pop it in your ear.
Yeah, we got to be like 5 or 10 years away from like a pretty reasonable looking set of glasses, maybe a little thick.
Sure.
That have a camera built in
and speakers like the temple speakers. Have you seen those?
I have. Yeah,
those are cool because they're open ear
speakers. Yeah, so if you were to wear and then if essentially that device was just paired to your phone, so now your phone with its AI can see what you see and hear what you hear and talk to you, then you could just go throughout your day and like ask AI about anything you experience.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
And basically we're a step away from like it being able to read your thoughts, but in any moment of your day, say like you see a certain thing that you want to remember, but you also have to put it in your phone to remember it, or you just have to remember it. But now you can just have it kind of cataloged, and it could be seeing it, and you could reference that moment back.
Yeah.
And be like, what was that thing that I saw that I said I wanted to get, or whatever.
I just hope the open source community keeps developing essentially on par with the big corporations, because it all sounds like a nightmare if it's all data being collected and going to some centralized company. Or
I think that's a drastic change in like technology that needs to happen.
Yeah. I don't think I would be secure. Like I would feel comfortable like wearing something all day that was like feeding info about everything I do to a company, which is essentially what our phones are already doing, but it would be worse. So
I mean, that's kind of like the plot of that Ready Player One movie, where they're fighting for the control over this like whole ecosystem of technology and gaming and metaverse that they had, and the corporate entity that wants to take it over to make as much money as possible instead of like making it open and free.
Right.
But, yeah.
So AI is continuing to
Creeping
progress. Apparently there's supposed to be a lot of other companies announcing stuff in the next couple weeks, so this will be a time to pay attention to that stuff.
Curious what Apple's going to do. They
They
doing
got a
much in the
big-
way of AI other than like their
they've got their WWDC event in June, which is when they always announce their new software platforms, and the theme this year is AI. So,
oh well then
We'll
we might see something like what we just described.
I mean,
If the technology's out there and they've been working on it for a sufficient amount of time.
I haven't heard anyone.
When's the last big update?
I haven't heard anyone who has claimed that Apple is like ahead of the pack in any way. So,
I mean, they did spend a lot of resources and time.
and there's
working
been
on those
rumors
Vision
that they're
Pros,
talking to
so-
Google and they're talking to OpenAI. So it could be that they use one of those to power Siri rather than their own
Hey,
thing.
OpenAI would be fine.
I mean, I guess as long as Apple could get them to respect the user privacy,
True.
but I don't know.
I mean, they would have to. It seems like a focus that they outwardly project, at least.
They do project it. They claim that they're the privacy company. I don't know to what degree they actually are, but they do at least do some stuff right. So anyway,
Yeah.
do you have any other stories or anything you want to cover?
Not. I mean, I sent Duality Check a few Instagram posts, but I didn't really nothing specific. It's more just like fun, cool stuff that I found.
Okay.
But
you
I
wanna
did.
play any of those or no?
Let's go look. Are you able to pull it up?
Let's look on the break. Maybe we'll come back because
Okay,
I don't want to
yeah.
pause.
So if you're ready to hop in, I can introduce us in a little bit. I wanted to, because we've been talking about all these different cultures that believe in reincarnation. I just wanted to give like a little rundown on some of the different cultures and what they believe and how they are all kind of connected.
Before you do that, there's one other thing I want to talk about. Have you listened to the latest Joe Rogan with this is a strange name. I gotta check this guy's book out.
Is it God's Side?
No, it's not God's Side. It is Rizwan Virk.
No,
Yeah, it's a newer one that just came out.
I have not.
So this guy, his career was in video games and computer science. And then after some video game success, he became an investor in Silicon Valley. And then he started dealing with some health issues. And every time he tried to go back to work, he'd get sick. So he ended up like going down a different path and writing. And because there was stuff he had always wanted to write about. So he starts kind of following that and his purpose, and he ends up writing books about simulation theory. And so the whole show is about simulation theory. And he's got an interesting take on it that I hadn't exactly heard that variation of.
Okay.
Because normally
I like that.
when you hear people talk about simulation theory, it's almost like they're trying to still cling to the materialism worldview, but just like put it in a
Different
simulation,
flair. Yeah, put a
right?
different flair on it.
Whereas this guy, he's spent a ton of time like checking out different like religious and spiritual traditions. He's like looked into like the yogis and shamans and UFOs and like his
Trying
like,
to find the patterns or something.
his breadth of like research regarding
them
it.
all over,
yeah.
yeah.
So his approach is, he says essentially what all the world religions are telling us is that this world is an illusion. This world isn't real. And that's also what physicists are starting to get at with quantum physics. And that's essentially what simulation theory is suggesting.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a more of a kind of a spiritual take on the simulation theory, you know, because, you know, if there is heaven and hell and like souls and the afterlife and all this, then like what is the physical world other than some sort of like false reality, when that is the root reality that everything comes from, right? So
Yeah.
in a way, you could call it a simulation, or you could
Just
call
one
it
way
an
to
illusion,
describe
or
it,
the
yeah.
Matrix, or whatever. But whatever
Or
it
the
is,
ether.
right? It's not exactly the real, which also like ties back into the secret history of the world.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to make that connection as well. Yeah. I mean, it really does, like, all the different things that have happened. Like, yeah. So at the root, like, based on like history and stuff, like, or from all the stories of all these esoteric historical figures and stuff, like, it's all just an illusion. Like, even their whole thing is like an allegory, and like,
Right.
you know, like they are trying to portray everything from the beginning to be an illusion. And it's like the material world is real to this part of like the entirety, like this area. It's almost like it's segmented.
Yeah.
Like there's areas where the laws of gravity aren't, as if like the different dimensions. Like there's areas where of this overall simulation,
Yeah.
where once you leave this one and you die, your programming, your soul, whatever it might be, is transported through different dimensions.
Yeah.
And you might live in different material worlds that all have different physics and have my you know, basically whatever. And if there is a creator, like the creator could just be a really good damn programmer that knows how to that actually knows how to program a life. And we might just be in some tesseract on some you know, being's desk, and it's all just the program that they work on, and they're able to achieve it, you know.
He even tries to connect it to like the Mandela effect and everything. He's like, this is, if it's a simulation,
A lot of
simulations are designed to run multiple times.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Or have backups.
it's possible that like sometimes the simulation gets rerun and there's a slight variation, and some people still remember the old version.
Yep.
And so maybe that's where some of this Mandela effect type stuff is coming from. And then he also relayed a story about some a Sufi mystic, which is like of the Islamic tradition. And he had said something to the effect of that oh, I'm losing the quote. Okay. So what the Sufi mystic was saying was something along the lines of that essentially that there's a type of creature that, like the jinn, that has the ability to make changes in the world, but doesn't have the ability to change people's memories. And so they can actually change like physical things, and it can end up leaving certain people remembering certain things while other people remember other things. It's interesting. But yeah, he just tied together a lot of different areas and like attached them all to simulation theory, which was pretty unique. I haven't
have to, because I love the simulation theory and all the different variations of it. And this does seem different from a lot of them that I've heard.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to check out his book because he's intriguing me. So. Yeah.
That'll be our next series. Not next, but it'll be a future series.
It'll be a future series, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, cool. So should we do our first reincarnation story for the day?
So let me lead it in.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we might have to take a break, but unless you want to do it, we'll probably have enough time for one story. But so yeah, we, like I was saying, we talked about a lot of these cultures and the religions, but we didn't really describe exactly their beliefs and what their beliefs are in it. So one of them is Hinduism. In Hindu philosophy, reincarnation is known as samsara, a cycle of birth, death, and rebirth governed by one's actions or karma. The ultimate goal is to achieve moksha, or liberation from the cycle of reincarnation, which is attained by realizing one's true nature as Atman, or the soul. It's and its unity with the Brahman, the ultimate reality. So that's their belief in reincarnation. Buddhism, similar to Hinduism, Buddhism teaches the cycle of rebirth, which is influenced by karma. However, Buddhism's concept of reincarnation does not involve a permanent soul. Instead, it's a continuation of a flux of consciousness that links one life to another. Enlightenment or nirvana is achieved by extinguishing all desires and attachments, thus ending the cycle of rebirth. Jainism, Jain beliefs also include the cycle of reincarnation, where every living soul where every living being has a soul that seeks ultimate liberation. The soul's rebirth in various forms of life is based on karma, accumulated through good or bad deeds. Excuse me. Liberation is achieved through ethical living, nonviolence, and self-purification. Sikhism. Sikhs believe in reincarnation, but emphasize that the cycle of birth and death can be transcended through meditative remembrance of God, leading to spiritual liberation. And then Taoism have some, they believe that reincarnation is possible, but is not inevitable. They focus more on achieving spiritual immortality through the Tao, the fundamental nature of the universe. There are some Native American and indigenous beliefs. Various tribes hold beliefs in a form of reincarnation, often involving the soul's journey and transformation through different existential planes or return of the spirit to the community in new forms. African and Afro-Caribbean religions, some traditional African religions and Afro-Caribbean faiths like Candomblé and Santeria believe in Santeria believe in the reincarnation of ancestors and the continual presence of these spirits within their communities. And then some of the New Age and Western esoteric beliefs in the West. Reincarnation has been popularized through New Age and esoteric schools of thought, often drawing on both Eastern religions and Western metaphysical concepts, emphasizing personal spiritual development and the progression of the soul through multiple lifetimes. So, yeah, basically the common thread is, the continuation of quote-unquote souls moving through different forms of life on a journey.
Right. Yeah, it makes me think of that podcast because he also talked about reincarnation and incorporated it in, and his view was that, like, imagine, like, what's our closest analog to the simulation is video games, right? Mm-hmm. And like, if you sit down to play a video game, like, you have a certain set of outside knowledge, sure, right? And then you sit down in that chair and you make a decision to play the game, mm-hmm, right? You boot it up. There's some goal you have in mind. Like, you're either there to have fun or you're there to like maybe you sit down in your big MMORPG and your goal this session is to complete a certain quest line or whatever, right? Yeah. And then you turn on the game and boop, your avatar wakes up, and like, your avatar doesn't have the knowledge you have. You, as the outside entity outside of the simulation, have these goals. Your avatar doesn't. You control the avatar. You bring the avatar into existence, mm-hmm, and you give it its reason for being, even though it doesn't know what its reason for being is.
Right.
And so if you then sit down and you're playing the game and you don't achieve that goal, then, you log off, and next time you sit down, maybe you go for it again. Mm-hmm. And so maybe that's kind of like essentially what's going on with reincarnation is, like, you set up your goals for a life, the things you're logging in to achieve, and you're agreeing to, like, losing access to all those memories but you don't need your avatar to necessarily remember everything. You're essentially picking, like, where and when and who you're born to in order to set your life up for the game you want to play this time around.
Or the thing you're ultimately, your goal, the goal you set.
And then, you know, if you end up not going down that life path,
or things happen in the game that change the way the outcome. Like if we're thinking of like a super advanced game where they have choices built into it, where your choices actually change the outcome of the video game.
Right.
They have different storyline based on your choices.
Right. So then once that life is over and you reintegrate all those memories into your, you know, whatever spiritual body or whatever, then at that point, you know, you might reincarnate to actually go and achieve the goal you set out to achieve previously.
Yeah.
But he like likens the whole thing to like he's like, there's different types of video games, right? Like you've got like single player games, like maybe they're set in some big fantasy world, but it's the single player game. And so like everyone around you is all NPCs. You're the only one,
right?
Like who represents a real consciousness in there. And then you've got like these big MMORPGs where there's all these other characters are other humans, and they have their own consciousness outside that game world. But you don't like you don't have direct observation of that either. Just like when like I look at you, I don't have access to seeing like the soul that is like pressing the keyboard controller to control you. But
dude, you know what's weird when we're talking about this? I could see give us and our current trajectory with technology, give us with no calamities, nothing to destroy us. You know, we eventually get to a point where we're mostly peaceful throughout the world, and we just, you know, try to live harmonious, right? And we get to a point where our technology's so good. Not everything's perfect, you know, because that's just never gonna happen. But we get to a point, give us 1,000 years. We have the technology to be able to plug into our own simulation that we're created to exactly mimic our life, but you can do exactly that. You set a goal. It's a one-time play per version, right? You plug into that character. You have to live out that entire character's life, but it's like a hit of DMT or something where it's only like a 15-minute experience. But
that happened in a Rick and Morty episode.
Well, that's perfect. I've never seen that episode.
Yeah, Morty goes to some arcade and he like plugs in, puts on a headset, and it freaking transports him into another universe, and he goes and he lives an entire life.
Yeah.
And it comes to some tragic end, and he wakes up and he's like, oh, Rick, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that's basically it. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of that idea is like, I can see us as humans in our existence, and still being connected to our own existential. Like, if we don't move that route, we're definitely going to go to this technological route, and we might be able to, within that, discover what it is that we've been searching for, but in our own technology where we see it being possible.
It's also possible, and he brought up this idea, but then they kind of ended up shifting topics and didn't fully explore it, but I think I know where he was going with it, which was they were talking about like there's also like a third option, which is like some sort of hybrid approach where there's NPCs and there's player characters mixed in, and also like your player character may be able to do actions while you're not logged in. So your own avatar can be in NPC mode. And that's where like all the mystical traditions on like how to get like in that right path of your life, like follow your flow and whatnot. Like it's possible essentially to live your life in a way where you're an NPC, or it's possible to live your life very consciously and purposely. Which makes me think of things like people who struggle with addiction, where they're like losing control of the choices in their life, you know, like they feel like they don't control their own brain and their own desires. But
yeah, it's a very advanced simulation. If this is all a simulation, like, whew. That was perfect way to end our first segment.
Yeah,
we'll come back with our first story on reincarnation.
righty, we'll be right back. Welcome back.
All right. Welcome back for our second segment of Duality Check.
And we have that show pre-recorded now, so this will actually be a couple weeks after it's happened. But for us, we just passed the weekend with the big geomagnetic storm.
Yeah. It was a coronal mass ejection, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a giant sunspot.
Right.
And I just watched a video. Apparently, the sunspot is similar in size and character to the one that caused the Carrington event.
Yeah, and that was the one that knocked out all of the telephone poles and caused a bunch of fires and stuff because a lot of that was low.
I think it was before telephone. I think it was it
was telegraph.
It was telegraph at the time, right. But a lot of the electronics exploded and so
vibration.
This was a major solar eruption, CME, that came out of that sunspot, and it hit with 5 bursts. I saw the animation of it. It was poof, 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 poof. And we orbited right through that. So we got hit hard.
Yeah.
And auroras were visible
down to
Hawaii.
Yeah, it was down to Hawaii. That's right.
And then in the southern hemisphere, they said is as far north as Queensland, which I'm not sure how far north that is. I know that's Australia, but
pretty close. It's everywhere but the equator, almost.
Yeah, right.
Within a few hundred miles, 1,000 miles or whatever.
So yeah. If you have any cool photos or you got to see really good pictures of the
show them off
of the Aurora, send them to us.
Send it in an email.
My coworker lives in the Michigan area, and she sent me a bunch of photos, and dude, they're really cool.
Yeah, I wish.
Especially up in Michigan, that far north where they can already see the northern lights a lot anyway.
Right.
They got
a big show.
They got a big show, yeah.
I saw some videos where people were right underneath, they were up in the Arctic somewhere, and they were right underneath, that animation where he shows the magnetosphere and how it funnels into the north and south. And they're right underneath that, and the view that not right, but they're pretty close, where they're seeing this massive influx of particles hitting the barrier and just shooting off into light. Because other people just see it kind of a gentle glow and changing of colors, but it was intense in that video that I saw. I wish I would have had it ready, but.
So what's interesting about the event is that it didn't blow everything up.
Right.
So there's a couple countries. I know South Africa was one of them where they did have a bunch of like transformers explode, but most countries didn't.
Which was a worry.
Yeah.
When they first, it was a big concern.
There was only like minor disruption to GPS. We didn't lose any satellites, not even the SpaceX ones because apparently what happens when the CME hits the atmosphere, it heats up the upper atmosphere, which causes it to expand out into space further. And that atmosphere expanding further into space affects low Earth satellite orbits, and the lowest Earth orbits are the Starlink ones. And not even any of those came down from the storm. And so scientists are actually kind of scratching their head trying to figure out like why it wasn't that bad.
I did notice some weird, like unusual, like internet things that day. Like it just was slower, or maybe there was just more people using it and trying to like watch it and look at videos, or I don't know what was going on, but it did seem like it was a little more sluggish.
Yeah, and that's to be expected, but
right, dude, and this happens right after a full solar eclipse too.
Yeah.
We're getting some crazy galactic universal stuff going on.
Yeah. So I watched this video, Anton Petrov, who I always watch his videos on YouTube. He does a bunch of like science stories daily, and they're short videos. He did a whole segment on this. I'll link the video. But yeah, he was like, scientists around the world are just trying to figure out like either A, like we don't fully understand these events because we expected an event of this magnitude to have like major like ramifications for our technology.
Disruptions, yeah.
Or we've actually done a better job of like shielding our electronics than we thought we did. But you've heard people speculate about like if another Carrington event were to happen today, that like it would destroy like our computers and everything. But that didn't happen. So,
or this is an alternate universe that started the day that this all happened.
Oh, but he did also point out though, because we're in solar cycle 25. Oh, sorry, did I miss your joke?
No, it's fine. I'll probably say it again. Don't worry.
I didn't even process it.
Oh, good.
I still don't even know what it was.
I've already forgotten it.
But yeah, he was saying the other thing about it is like we're in solar cycle 25 and we're not yet at the peak. So the peak of this solar cycle is supposed to happen next year. So we're actually still at risk in this solar cycle for another big one.
Well, current trends. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Anyway,
next year.
Let's talk about some reincarnation, eh?
Let's go.
All right, so we're on chapter 7 of Life Before Life, and this is the story of Sam Taylor. Sam Taylor is a boy from Vermont who was born a year and a half after his paternal grandfather died. When Sam was 1.5 years old, his father was changing his diaper one day, and Sam told him, "When I was your age, I used to change your diapers." After his mother saw the puzzled look on his father's face as he brought Sam out of his room, they discussed the comment, which they both found odd. Neither had given reincarnation much thought. Though Sam's mother was the daughter of a Southern Baptist minister, his parents were not religious. Following that incident, Sam gradually began saying that he had been his grandfather. He also said, "I used to be big, now I'm small." While his father was initially skeptical about such a possibility, his mother was more open to the idea, and she began asking him questions about the life of his paternal grandfather. At one point, she and Sam were talking about the fact that his grandmother had taken care of his grandfather before he died. Sam's mother asked him what his grandmother made every day for his grandfather to drink, and Sam correctly said that she had made milkshakes and that she had made them in a machine in the kitchen. He got up to show her the food processor on the kitchen counter. When his mother showed him the blender in the pantry and asked if he meant that his grandmother had made the milkshakes with it, he said no and pointed to the food processor instead. In fact, his grandmother had made milkshakes for his grandfather in the food processor. She then had a series of strokes after the death of his grandfather, and Sam had never seen her make milkshakes for anyone. At another time, Sam's mother asked him if he had any brothers or sisters when he lived before. He answered, yeah, I had a sister. She turned into a fish. You know what? When we die, God lets us come back again. I used to be big, and now I'm a kid again. The sister of Sam's grandfather, in fact, had been killed some 60 years before. Her husband killed her while she was sleeping, rolled her body up in a blanket, and dumped it in the bay. At other times, Sam correctly said that his grandfather's favorite place in the home was the garage where he worked on inventions, and that Sam's father had a small steering wheel of his own when they rode the car. When his father was a boy, he had a toy steering wheel that attached to the dashboard of the car by suction cups. When Sam was 4.5 years old, his grandmother died. His father flew out to her home to take care of her belongings and returned with a box of family photos. Sam's parents had not had any pictures of his father before, or of his father's family before then. When his mother spread them out on the coffee table one night, Sam came over and began pointing to the pictures of his grandfather and saying, "That's me." When he saw a snapshot that showed a car without any people, he said, "Hey, that's my car." It was a picture of the very first new car that his grandfather ever purchased, a 1949 Pontiac that was very special to him. His mother gave Sam a class picture from when his grandfather was in grammar school. The picture showed 27 children, 16 of them boys. Sam ran his finger over the faces, stopped on his grandmother's or his grandfather's face, and said, "That's me." His father says that Sam's grandfather did not communicate very well about emotional issues with his sons, particularly when they were adults. Sam's father let his own father know how he felt about him, but his father had a great difficulty reciprocating. He feels that if his father has come back through Sam, then his deceased father is reaching out to him to return his love. Sam's father is very open with all of his children, and he and Sam seem to have a very good relationship. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's cool because it's within the family and...
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an American case, which those are rare. The saying that his sister became a fish was pretty dark.
Yeah, no kidding. Especially finding out how she died.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was...
But
I mean, that could be just something that he heard or something, you know?
I guess, but there's also no way a kid like that young would have known that his dad used a suction cup steering wheel on a car.
Yeah, that detail passed over my head. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he said to his dad that he used to drive him around and that he had a steering wheel or something. Where does it say that?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
but it turned out that his dad did, in fact, have a toy steering wheel that attached to the dashboard with suction cups as a kid.
Oh, it's like the pretend wheel?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
Just like a toy steering wheel.
Yeah, I need to get Wyatt one of those.
He would love that, huh?
He would.
He'd probably crash the car.
Oh, my gosh. Not a real one, no. But he's already a backseat driver. Because if I'm sitting at a stop sign or a stoplight or something and I take my hands off the wheel, he can see me through his little mirror.
Uh-huh.
He's like, "Dad, you need to put your hands on the wheel on the wheel to drive." I'm like,
he knows so much.
And now he looks through and he can see the lights because every time we stop, he's like, "Why are we stopped?" I'm like, "It's the light." He's like, "The red light?" I'm like, "Yeah, it turns green." And then he'll look and be like, "It's green." Go. So funny.
Backseat driving.
I know.
At a young age.
It's funny.
All right, you ready for another case?
Yeah.
This is the case of Nazih Al-Danaf. One case that involves several recognitions is the case of Nazih Al-Danaf in Lebanon. At a very early age, Nazih described a past life to his parents and his 7 siblings, all of whom were available for interviews. Nazih described the life of a man that his family did not know. He said that the man carried pistols and grenades and that he had a pretty wife and young children. That he had a 2-story house with trees around it and a cave nearby. That he had a mute friend and that he had been shot by a group of men. His father reported that Nazih demanded that his parents take him to his previous house in a small town 10 miles away. They took him to that town along with 2 of his sisters and a brother when he was 6 years old. About a half mile from the town, Nazih asked them to stop at a dirt road running off the main road. He told them that the road came to a dead end where there was a cave. But they drove on without confirming this. When they got to the center of town, 6 roads converged, and Nazih's father asked him which way to go. Nazih pointed to the one of the roads and said to go on it until they came to a road that forked off upward, where they would see his house. When they got to the first fork that went up, the family got out and began asking about anyone who had died in the way that Nazih had described. They quickly discovered that a man named Fuad, who had a house on the road before dying 10 years prior to Nazih's birth, seemed to fit Nazih's statements. Fuad's widow asked Nazih, who built the fountain of the gate? Who built the foundation of this gate at the entrance of the house? And Nazih correctly answered, a man from the Faraj family. The group then went into the house where Nazih correctly described how Fuad had kept his weapons in a cupboard. The widow asked him if she had had an accident at their previous home, and Nazih gave accurate details of her accident. She also asked if he remembered what had made their young daughter seriously ill, and Nazih correctly responded that she had accidentally taken some of her father's pills. He also accurately described a couple of other incidents from the previous personality's life. The widow and her 5 children were all very impressed with the knowledge of Nazih, and they were convinced that he was the rebirth of Fuad. Soon after that meeting, Nazih visited Fuad's brother, Sheikh Adib. When Nazih saw him, he ran up saying, "Here comes my brother, Adib." Sheikh Adib asked Nazih for proof that he was his brother, and Nazih said, "I gave you a Checky 16. A Checky 16 is a type of pistol from Czechoslovakia that is not common in Lebanon." And Fuad had indeed given his brother one. Sheikh Adib then asked Nazih where his original house was, and Nazih led him down the road until he said correctly, "This is the house of my father, and this, the next house, is my first house." When they went in the latter house where Fuad's first wife still lived, and when Sheikh Adib later asked who she was, Nazih correctly gave her name. Sheikh Adib then showed Nazih a photograph of 3 men and asked him who they were. Nazih pointed to each and correctly gave the names of Adib, Fuad, and a deceased brother of theirs. Sheikh Adib showed Nazih another picture. Nazih had said correctly that the man in it was the father of those men. Later, Sheikh Adib visited Nazih's home, and he took a handgun with him. He asked Nazih if this was the gun that Fuad had given him, and Nazih correctly said that it was not.
Wow.
Dr. Haraldson investigated Nazih's case, and he was able to verify most of the statements that Nazih made, including the claim that the previous personality had a mute friend. He also found out that Nazih's description of Fuad's house matched another one in which Fuad lived for several years, including the time during which the house in town, which was not fully completed at the time of Fuad's death, was being built. The former house was by a dirt road that Nazih had pointed out during the family's first visit to the previous town, and a cave was also at the end of it, as Nazih had said. If the families in the case are remembering events correctly, then Nazih's statement seemed very difficult to explain by normal means. His spontaneous recognitions of the locations of two houses that the previous personality had owned are quite impressive by themselves. Adding his ability to correctly point out the previous personality's first house makes coincidence seem an unlikely explanation. On top of these, his statements to Fuad's family about various small details are also notable. His statement about the Checky 16 pistol is particularly impressive in a number of ways, one being that his knowledge could not have arisen from any environmental cues. His ability to change the names of the men, or to state the names of the men in the picture, is more impressive than cases in which a child simply points to a member of the previous personality's family. Yeah. Since environmental cues would lead him to know the names that he gave. The informant stated that Nazih had not seen pictures of the previous personality before he identified him to the group, or in the group photograph. And Sheikh Adib was certain that, with the possible exception of his wife, no one knew that Fuad had given him a Checky 16 pistol. So there's no way that knowledge could have gotten to him.
Yeah. I mean, this case and many of the other ones too, it's like so many coincidences have to line up, or you have to have the world's most elaborate hoaxer.
Right.
The world's most planned, like, what, like, and there's so many of them. You can't, like, it's not like one person going around and, like, doing this, or, like, like, it's.
And especially, like, what is the motivation for the hoax when there's not, like, some big insurance payment?
Sure.
Like, there's not, like, there's not some way to get, like, wealthy off of, like, the claim that you know a past life. I mean, other than, like, if the past life was a wealthy family and you essentially try and, like, scam them into,
like, give me my money back.
Right. You scam them into believing that you know, your son is a reborn member of their family. But none of these cases so far have been that. So,
no.
In fact, we've seen the opposite.
Yeah,
right?
Quite the opposite.
Right. So
fascinating. I mean, these stories are so good.
The next one's pretty long, so maybe we hang it till after the break. But
sounds good.
Let's
do you want to play that little just real quick? Let's play that little video, and then we can talk about that for a little bit.
Okay. So Drew prepared this video by Jenny Claffey.
I just found her after kind of like going down a little bit of rabbit hole in some of the reincarnation stuff. But
so she's a YouTuber, and this is a video called Proof of Reincarnation, 2 Insane Stories of Past Lives. And so do you know which life she's talking about here? Can you kind of like prompt what it is a bit before we play it?
Yeah, a bit. So it's about this little girl named Lottie who was, she was murdered in a past life, but like, you know, a little bit, like moody, like around the subject, but she would like spontaneously like say stuff, which prompted her mom to investigate. And basically just like through the statements, she talks about, being murdered. She talked about how she was murdered and all the details like of it basically. And in the course of their her conversations with her mom, she recounted the fact of there being like a time in between dying and being reborn again,
right?
And like what happens and what she felt or what she kind of experienced. It's kind of small clip. I've been kind of searching for that.
We're going for.
Yeah, because I'm kind of searching for that. I want to, like I was talking about in the previous one,
the time between lives.
Yeah, like what cases kind of like talk about that.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's what drew me to this video.
All right, let's check this one out.
Her mom said Lottie would be reluctant to talk about her past life when questioned directly, often just kind of saying nothing or kind of dismissing the questions, which she said was kind of out of character for Lottie. She was a very talkative little kid. Now, she only seemed to give information freely on her own terms, and Jenny says she took this very seriously. And when she was talking, she said it was a very different vibe than when she was playing or, pretending or playing make-believe. And Lottie would sometimes take days to answer a question, something that Jenny found to be kind of fascinating because her little daughter had apparently been mulling over the question in her mind for days. One day, though, Lottie did recall her experience of dying to her mother. Jenny was telling Lottie about a childhood pet she had. It was a dog called Maisie who had actually recently died. Lottie asked her mom if she thinks Maisie will come back as another dog. And Jenny replied, I don't know. Lottie said that Maisie won't be a new doggy yet because she only died a few weeks ago. She said that you spend a bit of time dead first. Then she told her mother that when she died, she turned to dust and floated into the sky. She said she stayed there for a while and came back as Lottie. She said she isn't afraid to die again, but it does make her sad because she likes being on Earth. So in December 1980...
Interesting.
Yeah, so that I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Dude,
so
all this stuff is converging, man. Like a lot of these reincarnation stories kind of sound a lot like the Owaspy stories too.
Well, and even you can even loop it in with like Chris Bledsoe and like his like the things he's learned from the beings he's contacted by, and like how like how like some of his contacts who he references, like some of the CIA people that are one of the CIA people or NSA or somebody who was like investigating him at one point. I can't remember his name, but they became friends, and he like has been their friend for like years now. But he was talking about how he thinks Chris Bledsoe is actually like a reincarnated version, like part of the like that bloodline or spirit, whatever, or they just chose him or whatever.
Yeah.
But somehow they're connected in some kind of, etheric way.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah. But he never, which I give him credit for, he never like goes on the whole like Messiah path or like prophet path,
right.
or which is,
he's not trying to tell people how to live their lives other
Yeah.
than to say to just be good to each other,
Yeah. Really? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Anyway, cool. Well,
Take a break off of that.
let's take a quick break, and when we are reborn into the next one, we'll continue.
See you in segment 3. Here we are. Segment 3.
Segment 3.
So let's hop in and get some more stories.
I am trying to pre-announce this word in my head because this next name is the doozy.
Smart. That's smart. Take all the time you need.
Gnanatilleka?
Okay.
I'm going to go with that.
Yep. Full send it.
Baddewithana, which I will only say this one time. So Gnanatilleka was born in Sri Lanka in 1956. And when she was 2 years old, she began saying that she had a mother and a father along with 2 brothers and many sisters in another place. After hearing about a town, Talawakele, that was 16 miles away, Gnanatilleka began saying that she had lived there. And she said that she wanted to visit her former parents there. When Gnanatilleka was 4.5 years old, the neighbor wrote about her to HSS Nisanka, a journalist who had written several articles about reincarnation and who later obtained a PhD in international relations. He subsequently wrote a book about Gnanatilleka's case, and I have taken numerous details from it. Dr. Nisanka decided to go see the girl, and he asked a well-known Buddhist monk and teacher at a nearby college to accompany him. They interviewed Gnanatilleka, and she described a number of incidents from a life in Talawakele, including one in which she had saw the queen as she traveled by train. She had not given any names other than Talakawele and a sister named Laura, or sometimes Dora. Since Queen Elizabeth had traveled through Sri Lanka in 1954, Dr. Nisanka and his companions assumed that Gnanatilleka was describing someone from Talawakele who had died between the time of that visit and Gnanatilleka's birth in 1956. Actually, they assumed that the previous personality must have died before Gnanatilleka's conception, but that is not an assumption that we would automatically share. Dr. Nisanka wrote 2 articles about the case for a popular weekly newspaper, and the 3 men then went to Talawakele to investigate. While in Talawakele, the group met a man who said that the information in the articles matched the life of a family member, a teenage boy named Tillekaratne. I'll go with that. A teenage boy named Tillekaratne who had died in November of 1954. Soon after that meeting, Tillekaratne's teacher went to Gnanatilleka's home along with 2 men Tillekaratne had not known. Each of the men asked Gnanatilleka if she knew him. She said no to 2 of them, but to her teacher, she said yes. Yes, you are him. She said she said, yes, you are from Talawakele. After a moment, she commented that he had taught her and had never punished her, and she climbed into his lap. The next day, the investigation team arranged for Gnanatilleka to meet members of Tillekaratne's family and at a rest house or inn in Talawakele, but they did not tell Gnanatilleka the reason for her trip there. Gnanatilleka sat in a room with her mother, the monk, and Dr. Nisanka, who recorded the events with a tape recorder. Gnanatilleka's father and Tillekaratne's teacher stood near the door, and other observers watched from the next room. Tillekaratne's mother then entered the room. The monk asked Gnanatilleka, "Do you know her?" Gnanatilleka looked up suddenly, excited, and stared at the woman. When asked again if she knew her, Gnanatilleka said yes. Tillekaratne's mother handed her a candy bar and then held her arms out to Gnanatilleka, who quickly hugged her. Tillekaratne's mother said, "Tell me, where did I live?" Gnanatilleka slowly answered, "Talawakele." Tillekaratne's mother said, "So tell me who I am." Gnanatilleka, after making sure that her own mother could not hear her, whispered to Tilikarotne's mother and to Dr. Nisanka's microphone, "Talawakele, mother." After a minute, the observers asked Gnanatilleka again, "Who was that lady? Tell us." And she replied, "She's my Talawakele mother." Next, Tilikarotne's father came in, and Gnanatilleka was asked, "Do you know him?" She answered, "Yes." And when she was asked who he was, she answered, "He's my Talawakele father." Following him, one of Tilikarotne's sisters, who had accompanied him to school every day, came in. And when Gnanatilleka was asked who she was, she replied, "This is my sister from Talawakele." "Where did you go with this sister?" "To school." When asked how they had gone, she correctly answered that they had gone by train. Coming in next was a man who had moved to Talawakele after Tilikarotne had died. He asked her, "Who am I?" "No." Dr. Nisanka asked her, "Do you know him?" "Look again carefully. Who is he?" She answered, "No, I don't know him." 3 women came in next. One asked, "Do you know me? Who am I?" Gnanatilleka answered, "Yes, you're my fair sister." Another asked, "Who am I?" "The sister who lives in the house below ours." Gnanatilleka's mother then asked her who the 3rd woman was, and she answered, "The sister to whose house we go to sew clothes." These were all correct for Tilikarotne's sisters. 2 men from Talawakele were sent in separately. One was a very close friend of Tilikarotne's family, while the other one had taught Tilikarotne in Sunday school. Gnanatilleka said that she knew each of them at Talawakele, but did not give other specifics. Lastly, Tilikarotne's brother went in. He and Tilikarotne had constantly quarreled, and when Gnanatilleka was asked if she knew him, she angrily answered, "No." She was asked again, and she answered, "No, no." Dr. Nisanka then told her that she could just tell her mother if she knew him. So she whispered to her mother, "My brother from Talawakele." And Dr. Nisanka asked her to let everyone else hear. So she said, "My brother from Talawakele." When Dr. Nisanka told Gnanatilleka to let the brother hold her, she began crying and said that she would not. Gnanatilleka made some very impressive recognitions, as she not only knew the relationship that the previous personality had with each individual, but other facts that she could not have known from appearance alone. She stated correctly that she had not known individuals that the previous personality had not known, the 2 men who accompanied Tilikarotne's teacher to her home, and the stranger whom the investigators brought in as a test for her. Gnanatilleka also made a couple of spontaneous recognitions later. She developed a relationship with Tilikarotne's teacher, and one day when they were out together, Gnanatilleka pointed to a woman in the crowd of people and said, "I know her." She told the teacher, "She came to Talawakele temple with me." And he confirmed with the woman that she had been friendly with Tilikarotne, and when they worshipped at they worshipped at the temple. Another time, Gnanatilleka pointed out one woman who was in a group of others and said, "She is angry with my Talawakele mother." The teacher checked with the woman and found out that she was a neighbor of the Tilikarotne's family who had previously had disagreement with Tilikarotne's mother, but they had since patched up their differences. Dr. Stevenson, on the scene a year after the controlled recognition tests, and interviewed people from both families as well as Tilikarotne's teacher. Following the initial interviews, he continued to check on the family from time to time. One item that he discovered was Tilikarotne did not have a sister named Laura or Dora. He had been classmates with a girl named Laura when he was younger, and he had some contact before, and they had some contact before his death. Dr. Stevenson interviewed her in 1970. She had never met Gnanatilleka, so he took her and one of her friends, to whom Tilikarotne had not known, unannounced to Gnanatilleka's home. He asked Gnanatilleka, who was almost 15 years old by that time, if she could recognize the 2 women. She called Laura Dora, confusing the names just as she had done as a young child. and said that she had known her in Talawakele, but she could give no other details. This was a remarkable accomplishment, even if we accept the possibility of reincarnation, since Laura had gone from being a teenager during Tilakaratne's life to being an approximately 30-year-old woman. Though we might suppose that this was not so different from being able to recognize an old classmate at a high school reunion, Gnanatilleka did accomplish the recognition. Though she might have guessed the location of Talawakele, given the context Dr. Stevenson's previous contact with the family, her ability to state the name, which she had not given for any of the other women that people had asked her to identify, demonstrated knowledge that is hard to dismiss. Gnanatilleka's case was a sex change case, but she did not show particularly masculine traits. When she was young, her parents noted that she was more boyish than her sister was, but not to a severe degree. And as a teenager, her appearance was that of a typical Sinhalese girl. The previous personality, however, tended to be rather feminine. He preferred to be with girls at times, painted his fingernails. He enjoyed sewing and liked silk shirts. In that area, in that time, these characteristics made him different from most of the other boys. So maybe it was the previous life that was actually the sex change case, you know?
Yeah.
So there's another one.
Wow. There's a lot of different stuff in that one, yeah.
Yeah, especially because there was actually an investigator on the scene who was able to kind of do the controlled recognition tests.
Yeah. So the previous personality was 30 when she died?
No, what they were saying was that because there was time between the lives.
It's about a 30-year difference.
Yeah, so from the time.
Seeing the person from the.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
From the time Tilakaratne died and to the time Gnanatilleka got to meet that girl, because she had grown to be 15 by the time they presented her with that girl. So there's 15 years plus the time between lives plus the previous personality's lifetime, right? So
how long was the previous? How old was the previous personality? Did they ever say that? That's what I was wondering.
They didn't really talk about how the previous personality died.
Okay.
But Gnanatilleka was born in 1956. Oh no, they said the other personality died in 1954.
1954.
Yeah. So
and she was
2
born.
years difference.
Okay. 2 years. So yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was okay. But it didn't say how old she was still.
No, it didn't. But I'm assuming if you do the math, 15 plus 2, and then this person who was a classmate was 30 by the time she saw her, so must have been like 13 or something when they died. The previous personality. So
that makes okay. Yeah. That's good math. Checks out.
I'm bad at mental math, but apparently I succeeded.
I don't know. I'm not double checking it though.
Good enough for Chat GPT.
Chat GPT gives the statistics.
All right. You want another one?
Sure.
The case of Choe Hnin Htet in Myanmar. That is, we'll just call him Macho.
I think you said nacho at first.
These are 4 separate words.
Macho.
Choe Hnin Htet.
Okay.
In Myanmar involved not only a controlled recognition test, but also an experimental birthmark. The previous personality in this case was a young woman, Malai Laiwe, who was born with a heart defect. It limited her functioning significantly, and she was still attending high school at the age of 20 when she entered the Rangoon General Hospital for several months in 1975. She underwent open heart surgery there and died during the surgery. Following Malalawe's death, 3 of her friends offered to prepare her body for cremation. As they were doing this, they recalled the custom of marking a body. So they used red lipstick to make a mark on the left side of the back of her neck. They chose this spot as opposed to a more visible ones because they didn't want a future child to be disfigured. Dr. Stevenson pointed out that in choosing the back of the neck, the girls picked the worst possible site for producing an impressive experimental birthmark, since stork bite birthmarks are quite common and occasionally persist into later childhood. Stork bite.
Yeah, that's the first time I heard that too.
Yeah.
Is that just the...
It's just a cute little nickname for him.
Yeah. But it's common, apparently. I don't know if there's like a certain configuration they're talking about, or...
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Stork bite birthmarks.
Also known as nevus simplex, a common type of birthmark that appears as a flat, pale pink or dark pink or red patch on the baby's skin.
Usually present at birth and can occur anywhere on the body, but most commonly found on the forehead, eyelids, upper lip, between the eyebrows, and the back of the neck.
It's similar to what Sawyer has.
Interesting. Caused by blood vessels underneath the skin becoming stretched or dilated, resulting in a salmon or pink color.
Okay.
Huh.
The more you know.
Where did I leave off? Yeah, the stork bite. 13 months after Malalawe's death, her older sister gave birth to a baby girl she named Macho Hnin Htet. After the birth, Macho Hnin Htet's family noticed that she had a red birthmark on the left side of her back, or of her neck. At the time, her family did not know that Malalawe's friends had marked the body, but they learned a few days later when a neighbor told them. Since Macho's mother did not learn about the body being marked until after she gave birth, we can be sure that maternal impression, the idea that the mother's wishes or expectations could have led to the birthmark on her baby, played no part in this case. We can also be sure that the position of the birthmark did not lead witnesses to match it incorrectly with the site of the marking, because when Dr. Stevenson talked with one of their friends who had marked the body, she gave the location without knowing that Macho had been born with a birthmark. He also interviewed the other two friends who gave the same location for the marking. Cool, so you got some separation in the birthmarking.
Right.
The friends didn't know that the baby was born with it. The mother didn't know that the friends had marked it, and they got both verbal accounts separately. And we're able to get them separately before, notifying either of them of the other, which is, pretty cool.
Evidence is mounting.
Yeah. Macho also had a mark on her chest that presumably was a birthmark, but her family did not notice it for several years until someone suggested that she might have a birthmark to match Malalawe's surgical incision. It was a thin, pale line, lighter than the rest of her skin, and it ran down the middle of her lower chest and upper abdomen. It matched an incision scar for an open heart surgery, except that it was lower, at least by the time that Macho was 4 years old, than an incision for such surgery would be. Soon after Macho became old enough to talk, she spoke of the previous life with her grandparents, the previous personality's parents. She said that her grandmother had been her mother. She talked of dying when the doctors operated on her. She also said that her name was Lailai, and that she would cry if family members teased her by calling her that. She was not Lailai. She would cry if family members teased her by telling her that she wasn't Lailai.
Oh.
In addition, she called her mother the term for older sister, her maternal uncle brother, and her grandfather Papa. Dr. Stevenson investigated the case when Macho was 4 years old. 3 days before his interviews, two of Malalawe's friends one of whom had marked her body, visited the family. The marker had not seen Ma Choe since she was a baby, but Ma Choe was very friendly with her. She walked out to the gate when she saw the woman, rather than notifying the adults as she would normally do. And when she met them, she asked the woman to call her Lai Lai Wei. She led her to meet her grandmother, who asked her, "Do you know her?" To which Ma Choe responded, "Yes, of course, we were friends." When Dr. Stevenson conducted his interview, he discovered that the friend, another one of the women who had marked the body, had never met Ma Choe. He and his interpreter decided to take her to Ma Choe's home without letting the family know that they were coming. After they arrived at the house, they pointed to the friend and asked Ma Choe, "Who is she?" Ma Choe quickly answered, "Mient, mient, ooh." I don't know how to pronounce that.
Hey, that was pretty good.
Yeah. We wish that we had more opportunities to conduct such tests. Unfortunately, the children in our cases are usually have usually met the important figures in the life of the previous personality by the time that we arrive on the scene. During these meetings, the family have frequently judged them to recognize a number of persons from that life, but we haven't been able to assess that for ourselves. In order to conduct more tests ourselves, we need to get the cases sooner. Ideally, getting to a case before anyone has identified the previous personality would give us a wonderful opportunity to arrange such tests. But many such cases never come to our attention. Some parents may not want others to know that their children is talking about a past life if the case is unsolved and the statement's unverified. Even if the parents don't mind others knowing, people are naturally less likely to talk about a case that's unsolved. So our agents in the various countries are less likely to hear about them, which, makes sense. So yeah, there's another case. We got birthmarks. We got identification tests.
Yeah.
And even an identification test that Dr. Stevenson himself was able to.
Yeah, he got to him young, like 4 years old. Right?
Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty solid case.
Yeah, it's all pretty convincing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless it's all a hoax and all this information is just completely fabricated. But,
yeah. But it stretches credulity.
Yeah.
At a certain point. Cool. Should we try and fit one more in, or?
Yeah.
Actually, this is kind of a long one.
Do you want to finish on that, or do you have more to do on this one?
Let's finish on this one. All right. So Bobby Hodges is a boy from North Carolina. So we got another American case. Heck
cool.
Yeah. Frequently talking about wanting to live with his cousins. His cousins' family consisted of one boy, the oldest child, and 3 girls. In addition, Bobby's aunt miscarried a set of twins after her son was born. Bobby said that the boy was his big brother and asked why his mother was keeping him from his real family. He repeatedly said that he belonged with his cousins. His parents, thinking that he liked his cousin's family because it had more children than his own, never gave his statements much thought until he began talking to his mother one night after his bath when he was 4.5 years old. He asked her if she remembered when he was in her tummy. She said yes and asked if he remembered when his 2.5-year-old brother Donald was in her tummy. He then asked if she remembered when he and Donald were in her tummy at the same time. When she told him that they had not been in her tummy at the same time, he said they were in her tummy at the same time, but he did not get born. She told him that he did get born, and later Donald was born. He responded that he and Donald had been in his Aunt Susan's tummy at the same time rather than his mother's, and asked why Aunt Susan didn't give birth to them. Bobby then became very upset and began screaming at Donald. He said, "Donald, it's all your fault. I told you I wanted to get born real bad, and you didn't want to. How did you take me out of there, Donald? Why didn't you want me to get born? Tell me how you did it. Tell me how you took me out of there."
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
At this point, Bobby's mother had to restrain him to keep him from going after Donald.
Right, he's pissed.
Yeah. She told him not to scream at Donald and that Donald didn't know what he was talking about. Bobby screamed that Donald did know and asked him again why he'd taken Bobby out of Aunt Susan's tummy. Donald then took his pacifier out of his mouth and yelled, "No, I wanted Daddy," before popping his pacifier back in. Bobby yelled back, "I didn't want Daddy. I wanted Uncle Ron." Dude, they're fighting over which parents they're born to. This is crazy.
What, dude? So so he wanted it to go with his parents that's crazy.
Yeah, he wanted to be born to his aunt and uncle's family.
Yeah.
But his younger brother wanted to be born to their family.
And it's their current mom that they're talking to him, obviously.
Yeah. So after Bobby calmed down somewhat, he told his mother that after the failed pregnancy, he had tried to get back in Aunt Susan's tummy, but Rebecca, his cousin, was there. He told his mother, "I wanted to be in there, and she wouldn't let me. I tried to kick her out, but it didn't work, and she got to be born, and I didn't." He said that he got in his mother's tummy and was born. He said, I sure did have to work hard to get here, Mom." To give some background, Bobby's Uncle Ron is his father's brother. Ron's wife, Susan, became pregnant with male twins 7 years before Bobby was born. At 33 weeks gestation, Susan did not feel any movement from the twins. And when she went to the hospital, the doctors found that both had died. The hospital records indicate that the attachment of one of the umbilical cords to the placenta did not have adequate coverings around the blood vessels, and so was very susceptible to being compressed. The doctors told Susan that they suspected that one of the twins rolled over on the cord there. This stopped the blood flow, killing one twin, and because of shared circulation, the other one died soon thereafter.
Whoa.
Since the miscarriages were understandably upsetting to the parents, the family never spoke of them, and Bobby's parents feel sure that he had never heard about them. Susan and Ron became pregnant again a few months later, and they subsequently had 3 girls. The last one, Rebecca, was born 18 months before Bobby was. That was the one he was trying to get in there. In addition to his talk of being one of Susan's twins, Bobby made a few comments about other lives that he said he remembered. He said that in one, he died from a gunshot wound, and in another, he was a teenager who died in a motor vehicle accident. One time after recovering from the flu, Bobby told his mother, "Mom, people in the other world don't get sick." She responded, "The other world, Bobby?" And he said, "The world where I was waiting to get born. People don't get sick there. They're just happy and never get sick. I wish people didn't get sick in this world." Another time he talked about his parents' wedding, which occurred when his mother was pregnant with him. Since she was noticeably pregnant at the ceremony, she does not have any wedding pictures on display in their house. She and her husband got married in a gazebo on a hill, and they had to climb steps up the hill and again into the gazebo. They didn't believe that Bobby had ever seen a picture of the wedding or heard them discuss it until one day Bobby saw his mother looking through a pile of pictures. She gave him a picture of his parents' wedding, a close-up shot of them standing in front of the railing. It is the railing of the gazebo, but that is not obvious from the picture. His mother is holding flowers and his father is wearing a boutonniere. They're standing in profile, apparently facing the minister, but the back of a woman, presumably a member of the wedding party, blocks the viewer from seeing the person in front of them. When Bobby's mother asked him if he knew what it was a picture of, he answered, "Yes, Mom, it's a picture of you and Dad getting married. I was there. I saw the whole thing." She asked, "You did?" And he answered, "Yes, Mom. You walked up the stairs and you gave each other rings and then you ate cake. I happened to call her immediately after this exchange, and she told me what Bobby had said. She did not see any way he could have known that she and her husband walked up the stairs to start her wedding. At one wedding he had attended, cake had not been served because of an air conditioning problem. His mother does not normally even eat cake, but she did so at her own wedding because she thought that not eating cake might bring bad luck. On his 4th birthday, Bobby had talked about being born. His mother reports that he was born by cesarean section after a prolonged labor. He had presented in a face-up position called an occiput posterior position, and nurses were unable to get him to turn. When Bobby talked about his birth, he said that he had been kicking in the womb because he was trying to get out. His mother responded that he had to wait to get born, and he said, I know, and it was making me mad, and I was pushing to get out. And then they were pushing on my head, Mom, trying to get me to go back in, and that was making me really mad because I wanted to get out, but I couldn't because I was stuck. His mother was shocked and said, yes, you were stuck, and they were pushing on your head to get you to turn over. All you had to do was turn over, and you could have gotten out. He responded, oh, I didn't know that. I would have turned over, but I thought they were pushing me back in. Anyway, then I saw the light, and then the doctor took me out of your tummy, and then they cleaned all that slime off, and then they put me in a bed, and then I got some sleep.
Dude, oh my gosh.
That's a cool one, right?
I wish. That would be such a cool conversation with your kid. I mean, weird, but cool.
But it's like the exact types of like misunderstandings that like, you would think a kid would have. Like, I was kicking to get out.
I was like,
and they were trying to push me in.
I was like, heck no, I'm not moving. And you just, wow. That one's so good.
That's a cool one.
Yeah.
You get the talk of the time between lives.
Yeah, I really like that stuff.
Dude, yeah. The talking about like him trying to go in and get born to her again, but there was already someone in there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And he tried to go in anyway, but she wouldn't let him. And so it almost seems like maybe the way this works is that, you know, when a child is conceived, that like there's an empty shell there ready for the claiming, right? And that a soul has to then go and claim it, right? Yeah. And if a soul has already claimed it, another soul might still try and go in and fight for access to it, but
ultimately be denied.
Which is
that's a crazy way to think about
fascinating.
It. Makes me think of like Inside Out and some of these like animated stuff where they do a lot of like Boss Baby even. And a lot of these like cartoony shows, like a lot of it has like reincarnation and like, you know, internal lives and different dimensions, and it's kind of all like the esoteric thought in it.
I love the idea that he's holding a grudge against his little brother because his little
brother followed him there.
Yeah, messed up them getting born to their aunt.
And there's also like I know some of the stuff that like I've researched is like they talk about like groups of souls
that travel together.
Pods. They call them kind of pods, and they like go life to life and through the generator. Like they kind of like usually there's like a handful that like are together in each life or around each other and interact in some way, and they like choose people near each other that would interact in a next life or whatever. But there's like could be like mini groups too. Yeah, like that idea of like our, you know, eternal soul kind of like going through like the ether and just kind of like picking and choosing a time frame. Time is, you know, irrelevant.
So since you're so interested in the like time between lives cases, I didn't highlight, but I'll read some of the like after case discussion he does of this. Okay. Because he talks about like this is one of the examples of a case where a child talks about the time between lives. Oh, perfect. So we'll see what he says about that. Oh yeah. After we come back from our break. Enjoy. Welcome back.
There we are, yeah. We are back. All right, I want to hear more about the in-between. Let's get in between.
So, Bobby's case is an example of one in which the child talks about the interval between death of the previous personality and his birth. In his case, he talked about events that took place when he was in his mother's womb and made one reference to being in another world before coming to his mother. Most of the subjects in our cases do not make such statements. In 1,100 cases, 69 subjects reported memories of the previous personality's funeral or the handling of remains. 91 described other events happening on Earth. 112 reported memories of being in another realm. And 45 reported memories of either conception or of being reborn. Some of the children are counted in more than one category since they describe more than one type of experience.
Sure.
And only about 217 out of the 1,100 reported having at least one of these experiences.
Okay.
So that's, a little lower than 20%.
Yeah.
Since we obviously can't verify any claims that the children make about another realm and often can't verify the other statements about experiences between lives, the intermission memories tend to be more speculative area than other parts of the cases. A couple of factors suggest that we should at least consider the statements. First, some children have made statements about events that occurred that were later verified as accurate. Limited evidence exists in those cases that supports the children's claims to remember events that took place between lives, and we'll briefly look at several of those shortly. Children in the stronger cases tend to make these statements more often than children in the weaker ones, adding some support to their validity. I developed a scale that rates the strength, of each case. When we look at the different types of intermission memories, one of the previous personalities' funerals, ones of other events, ones of being in another realm, and ones of conception or birth, either individually or as a group, we found that the likelihood that a child will report them has a positive correlation with the score that the child gets on the strength of case scale.
Okay.
Poonam Sharma, a medical student working with us, also ran statistics that showed the children who report intermission memories are more likely to remember the name of the previous personality and the way that the person died than are children who don't report those memories.
Okay.
They tend to remember more names from the previous life in general, and they make more statements about that life that are later verified to be accurate. A number of the reports are fascinating in any event and seem worth noting.
Yeah. So they just have a greater memory. It's almost like they've gotten to maybe there's like levels to this whole thing, right? So like if you're reincarnating, you're essentially leveling up, right? It's kind of the idea, the cyclical thing where you grab on and you take things from each of your incarnations. And sorry, I'm pretty far from my mic. So you're taking things from these levels and you're leveling up in a sense, and you get to a point where you almost have access to your memories.
Right.
And that's like a close tier to when you like are able to get to this liberation or,
but
enlightenment or whatever.
It makes sense, and like you would expect it to be the case that like there's correlation, right? Like the idea that a stronger case is more likely to remember what happens in the intermission.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And it's vice versa. Like the ones who remember the intermission, they make more statements, more verified statements. Like they just, in general, are stronger cases, right? So
this Bobby one was for sure. The kid Bobby, like that one was definitely a lot stronger, and he had a lot of intermission stuff. A lot of it.
Yeah.
Like remembers fighting with them and like
Yeah. And says
in the
he doesn't
womb.
like that people get sick and that people don't get sick in the other
Mm-hmm.
world, which is cool, by the way. I'm glad there's no freaking heaven COVID.
Right. Yeah, you just kind of like it's fascinating that like if that exists, all right, if you allow yourself to go there, then like there's so many possibilities as to like what is all of this, you know?
Right.
What it is what we are like what is all this that we're experiencing if there's other things outside of it,
Yeah.
you know? And that they interact and they coexist and there's like layers to it.
Yeah.
You know, and it could not even, I don't know, like once you step out of it, you get to the intermission, but then what kind like of flexibility does it have? Are you just on this kind of like tier world line where you're on Earth, or is there other places or things you can experience outside of that?
Right. Right. Yeah. Like, it seems like they all kind of spend a little bit of time in the afterlife. So maybe there's like a debriefing period and like a preparatory period, you know, like a little bit of time you need to spend in the other life, you know.
Or because there's no real relation to time to how long you spend in there. You just get to like, it's like the video game simulation theory again, you know, like you get out of a game session and you'll go
The time
walk
clock
around.
could be running at a different rate.
So you go and grab some juice, hit the bathroom, go hit your vape pen, you come back and sit down, you know, their life, that other life spinning. And
Right.
by the time you get back, it's like only been like a second for you.
Yeah. Like you said with video games, like I play FIFA and the in-game clock runs, you know, in real soccer, it's 45 minutes for a half.
Right.
But in FIFA, it's 6 minutes for a half. But
Right,
you
right.
still see the clock count to 45. So like game time and real time aren't synced up. And it could be the same sort of idea.
Right, right.
So
Yeah.
that once
That's
you're
good.
out of your body, that the time or the clock runs at a different rate. Here's some more commentary about it.
Yeah.
25 out of 1,100 subject described details of the previous personality's funeral or the handling of remains that were verified to be accurate. So that's one way you can verify the between life statements. Like if they're making a statement about how the previous personality's remains were handled,
Yeah.
then
They have
That's-
memories even. They're
that's
lingering. That kind of like
Uh-huh.
gives into like the poltergeists or ghosts or,
right.
you know.
Makes you want to like be on your best. I mean, you should be anyway if you're not a dick, but it makes you want to
Yeah.
be on your best behavior for funerals and memorials.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Um,
They could be watching you.
yeah. One example is Ratana Wongsambat from chapter 5, who correctly described the previous personality's ashes being spread under the bow tree of the temple complex rather than being buried as she wanted. Sometimes the statements are not specific enough to be verifiable. For instance, Purnima Ekanayake from chapter 4 said that after her fatal accident, she floated in the air in semi-darkness for several days. She saw people crying for her and saw her body at the funeral. She said that many people were floating around as she was. She then saw some light, went to it, and came to her new family. The
So
children
that
who
was
make
all it was for her. Yeah.
yeah, so like how do you verify that?
Yeah.
Like the children who make comments about the funeral of previous personality do not tend to make many of them, so they don't seem to focus on it. If we accept the statements that they do make, they imply that the consciousness of the previous personality stayed around the body or the family for some time after death.
Yeah.
Then he's talking about the reports from another realm. He says, Other particularly vivid descriptions of another realm include those of Disna Sama Saring, a girl in Sri Lanka who made numerous statements about the life of an elderly woman who died in a village 3 miles away. She described being lifted up, even though her body was buried, flying like a bird. She talked of meeting a king or governor whose reddish clothes and beautiful pointed shoes were never taken off, never dirty, and never washed. The same was true for her own clothes, except that they were golden. She said that she played at the king's home, which was made of glass and had beautiful red beds. She said that when she got hungry there, she simply thought of food and it appeared. The sight of the food satisfied her appetite. She didn't need to actually eat it. She said that the king took her to the home of her new family after asking her to go there. Another child who made similar statements was Sunita Khandawal, a girl in India who talked about the life of a woman from a city 220 miles away. She reported that after a fatal fall from a balcony, I went up. There was a Baba, which is a holy man, with a long beard. They checked my record and said, "Send her back. There are some rooms there. I have seen God's house. It is very nice. You do not know everything that is there." Certainly no one would disagree with that last remark.
Good. Yeah, that's fascinating. The difference in what that time could be like. Like everybody has their own or constructs their own version of the afterlife.
Yeah.
And it's almost like gives you like you still have agency even there. Like your soul has agency in what experience you have.
Mm-hmm.
So that begs to be like there's another level to it even.
Yeah.
Like there might be like some kind of inception version of existence where even our soul is the simulation or the playground of another higher realm. So like there is, if time is not of existence, right, and if this realm, which is all just speculation, but then like there's different levels to like once you get to like ascension or like enlightenment, I guess. Unless that's it, like unless that's your soul, your pure soul is like the height of existence.
Right.
But if there's multiple dimensions and there's talk in some of these esoterics like about there being a tier to, the heavens and God being the ultimate creator, even though we all are part of it, there's still like this ultimate thought that sparked it all.
Right.
And that God is experiencing himself through this program.
Yeah. It makes me wonder, like, I wonder if the natural, like, we'll call it a quote unquote soul life cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously, a soul has to come to being at some point, right?
Sure.
So a soul has a moment of birth,
Sure.
right? Because in the beginning, there should have only been God, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, a soul comes to exist. I don't know if a soul can ever, quote unquote, die. We'll just take, based on what everyone talks about of the afterlife, and say that it doesn't. But
right.
I wonder if in the process of a new soul being born, like, does it have to like incarnate into like, is it just a process of just learning and learning and learning? So like you start as a single cell bacteria, just learning the process of
doing that small task.
Metabolism, you know? And then like as you graduate from that, you become a bigger creature and a bigger creature and a bigger creature and more complex, like ultimately ending up and living like a human type or equivalent on another planet life, right? Mm-hmm. And that, you will keep doing the human thing until you've, got whatever you need out of it. And then maybe there's some next phase you go on to, right?
Yeah.
Where you don't need to be reborn anymore. or you don't care to.
So that means, like, what if even like aliens and other worldly creatures within the galaxies that are part of our material makeup, right? What if they are also part of this thing?
Right. And like one day you developed your soul so much that you're like the equivalent of like the white lady from
right. And you can teleport.
Chris Bledsoe, right? You know, like at some point you become a god of a different planet.
Like you can still reincarnate, but you are not, because you have this higher purpose of like helping others.
Right.
You know?
Or maybe you incarnate into a species that's more advanced than humans. Right.
On a different planet or something.
Right.
Yeah. Which is all just opening a can of worms, but I love these tangents that these bring about, bring all the different subjects into it.
So we're actually getting kind of close to the end here. I don't know if what I have marked is enough for a whole nother show. I think it might be. But so we're on to a chapter now where he's talking about opposing points of view.
Okay.
And he spends some time talking about the materialist scientific worldview and sort of the blind spots in there. And then he starts talking about like what are some other pieces of evidence that this could be real, right?
Yeah.
So he says, does other evidence exist to support the idea of consciousness continuing after a patient dies? One area of research into this question is the field of near-death experiences.
Yeah.
Many people who survive an incident in which they've come very close to death are clinically dead for a short period of time, report experiences that they had during that time. These often involve an impression of leaving their bodies and witnessing events from above, and then going to another realm where they meet deceased relatives or religious beings. Much of this is subjective, of course, and cannot be proven, but some people have reported hearing or seeing events that take place below them during the near-death experience that were later verified to have happened. One of these, Pam Reynolds, accurately described medical equipment that was not visible while she was awake, and a conversation that took place in the operating room while she was unconscious during a surgery for a brain aneurysm in which her body was cooled to 60 degrees, her heart was stopped, and the blood was drained from her body. In another example, Dr. Bruce Grayson here at University of Virginia investigated a report by a man named Al Sullivan about his experiences during an emergency coronary bypass operation. He said that when he looked down on the scene during his near-death experience, he saw his surgeon flapping his elbows. The surgeon and Mr. Sullivan's cardiologist confirmed to Dr. Grayson that the surgeon does have the unusual habit of flapping his elbows after scrubbing in for surgery. So
he would have already been under already been under anesthesia at the time, right?
But he talks at some point in the book, he talks about like one of his colleagues who is doing the near-death experience research and is essentially trying to set up a systematic way to test it, because he's like a type of surgeon in which they essentially have to bring the person to clinical death in order to perform the operation.
Right.
And so
they have firsthand knowledge of some of the accounts.
They've had accounts, and so they're essentially what he was talking about doing is like, say, for instance, like setting up a laptop with like certain images on it and putting it out of view of where the patient could ever see, but then like letting the patient know to check it out if they ever, end up in a near-death experience situation.
Out-of-body experience.
And then interviewing the patients when they wake up. So I don't know the results of that. I haven't followed in on it.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see.
That research.
Be cool to see.
Really cool to see the results of.
Yeah. All this stuff is so fascinating. I mean, we can go down so many like near-death experiences or past life regressions and, some of those cases too. Like, we could probably do this for a while.
Yeah. So anyway,
These type of topics.
We're at time for tonight. So
episode 23.
That was 23.
Yeah.
On episode 24, we might probably just finish this and maybe bring some other interesting stories and stuff to talk about if we don't have a full show worth.
Well, yeah, we can go into some secret history too if we want to.
Yeah, or I can even cover a couple of the interesting stories I found in the next book, which I didn't finish yet, but there are a couple stories that I found super fascinating.
I've been looking at some stories too, so maybe I'll do some highlighting over the next week.
Yeah, okay.
Sweet.
All right, y'all. Well, one more thing I wanted to mention. I want to keep shouting this out every show till it happens, but the Cosmic Summit is coming up.
Oh, yeah.
It's June 14th through 16th, and it's held by George Howard of the Cosmic Tusk website.
It says the 17th is a classroom day.
Yes.
So I wonder if he goes in there and teaches some sacred geometry.
Yeah, so Drew and I got tickets to this, to the virtual tickets anyway, so we'll have access to the live stream and the on-demand videos after they're uploaded. But
go check out their website.
CosmicSummit.com. We got Luke Caverns, Robert Schock, Johanna James, Randall Carlson, Hugh Newman, Scott Wolter, Praveen Mohan, Ben Van Kerkwick from Uncharted X. We got the Russ Allen from Brothers of the Serpent. We got Chandra Wickramasinghe, who's like 90 years old, dude, and
still doing it.
He's actually flying to the United States to be at the conference in person, which is awesome. And Randall's like, or George is like, dude, you can just come remote. And he's like, no, like I need to.
Too important.
I want to be here. Micah Hanks, and yeah, there's a bunch of the scientists who are from the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis group.
Cosmic Research Group.
Yeah. The Comet Research Group. Yeah, so you got Dr. Randolph Daniel from the Comet Research Group. Chris Cottrell will be there. He's not from them, but another Dr. Joanne Ballard. She's from the Comet Research Group. Dr. Alan West.
Oh, yeah.
He's like one of the big players in the Comet Research Group.
Malcolm Bendall.
Yeah, Malcolm Bendall, the guy who does the thunderstorm generator. He's going to be there, and they're supposed to be doing like live
demos.
Sick. And I wonder if George Howard will huff the exhaust like he has in the past. I bet he will.
That's how you do science, man.
Totally.
I keep having the image of a video of a scientist back in like the 40s or 50s who was doing a demonstration of like
like at the World's Fair
radiation.
Or something. Yeah.
And he put like a radioactive like a particle, like a big like glowing thing, and ate it.
Huh.
Show that it had like high levels of radiation with a Geiger counter.
Yeah.
And then it was like, it's safe and this is the future of energy. And then he just ate it to show how safe it was.
So if you got the traveling budget and the money, or you're nearby, definitely go to it in person, because there's nothing like being at an event like this and actually talking to the group of people that it attracts. It really feels like you find your crowd, which is cool. So if you have the opportunity to be there in person, you should absolutely do it. If you don't have that, then there's a virtual pass, which is $50 for just the Saturday and Sunday event, or $35 for the classroom day pass, or you can get both of those and $65 for the event and the classroom. And that gives you the live stream. And I know for sure that George Howard is planning on taking questions and audience participation from the live stream. So as long as they don't have any technical issues, like you could still be interactive and involved with it.
Yeah. Get your online handle involved in the conversation.
So check that out, people. Please support it. It's an awesome event, and we want to see this be a huge success so that it can continue to grow and grow.
Yeah, we want to go there.
More events like this.
Have conversations with these people too.
Right, with open-minded people talking about important topics and attracting the crowd of people that, you know,
and hopefully
doing more networking with. And
hopefully, you know, in the future we want to be able to get some of these people on, whether it's remote or in person.
Yeah, hopefully this will be the last year that we're so tied down that we can't travel and go to these events. But that is our goal in the near future, is to be able to be at all these things in person and talk to these people and get them to come on the show and stuff. And
I definitely want to do more tours and go see some of these sites on a lot of these geological
really
stuff. Like I want to go travel and do
tours.
that.
Yeah, I really want to do one of the Egypt tours.
I would love to take when Wyatt gets a little bit older. I'd love to take the boys, or both the boys, go see some of these cool
In the
sites.
meantime, we need to look up some sites that are here in California.
Yeah.
Like there are some interesting ones. Like the Catalina Island is one of the ones that's supposed to be where they found a lot of the giant bones. It's also a UFO hotspot.
That'd be cool.
It's off the coast of Santa Barbara. And then
Catalina's
Shasta
fun.
is another like UFO hotspot. But I think there's also some other sites with like Native American ruins and stuff that we need to look up. It would be,
you know, what we need to do
cool to explore some of that.
Is do like a houseboat trip up in Shasta Lake.
Oh, that'd be cool.
They got a lot of houseboats you can rent. I've done that a couple times with our friends. We just rented one that had enough beds for all of us, and we just camped out on the lake and tied up the boat to the shore.
Heck yeah.
Stay there for one night or 2 nights maybe.
Yeah.
It was fun. And that'd be a perfect place to go sit up on the roof of a houseboat or on the shore and like stargaze.
Yeah, Shasta's far enough out of civilization that you would be able to see.
You're on the middle of the lake
stars.
in the still lake at the middle of the night.
Yeah.
It's a cool place.
Heck yeah. All right, people.
All right, well, thanks for hanging out with us. We check us out. We were talking about supporting Cosmic Summit Group or Cosmic Summit, but support us. Like, subscribe, comment. Hit us with some emails.
Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah,
email us at hosts@dualitycheck.net.
What we're posting is usually just the episodes are live, and I've been doing a few like story things where you share people's stories and stuff. I don't know if you saw those through our Duality Check account.
I am still very minimally using social media. I
So
go on and
basically-
check it like in show prep and in editing, but I don't like look
So
at
some
it
of those,
every day.
so some
But
of
I
those
need to
fun
get better
videos
at it.
that you did see, that I'm sending, I put those on our story to be shared through our channel, so people can see those
cool.
videos through our.
We should be doing more
story.
of that in general, just sharing
So,
interesting
that's what I've been
things we
doing.
find. So
Dean had
follow
no
us. Let us know what's going on
Please.
with you.
Send us
Ask
pictures of your
questions.
Aurora.
Tell us what you think.
We want to
Tell
see your
us-
Aurora pictures.
We do. And we hope to see you virtually at the Cosmic Summit so
Yeah.
we can chat with you in the chat room.
Yeah, we're going to be wearing VR goggles so we can high five. Just kidding. All right, Joe. Peace out.
Adios.